iPhone 12. Yeah, let's do a little bit of a review, pros, cons, and that kind of thing, and then I'll tell you what I think about whether or not it's worth buying here in this 2020. Hey there, friends on YouTube. My name is Jason, sometimes known as the JTL. This is Painfully Honest Tech. Tech so honest it hurts. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for stopping by. If you've been here before, thank you so much for coming back again. Now, people, we got to talk for just a second. 30% of the people who watch these videos are subscribed to the channel. That seems like a low number. And really, we can get that number up, can't we? If you watch the videos and you're not subscribed, then maybe subscribe. Or if you're here for the first time, give me a shot. And hit that button, hit the bell notification icon, and like this video. And we will be friends. I promise you. Anyway, not Samsung. Anyway, the iPhone 12 is an interesting beast in 2020. Some strange things have happened this year in terms of what models Apple has put out and this difference between each of them. So let's talk a little bit. First, we'll go through price. $799 for 64 gigabytes. It's $100 more expensive than the iPhone 11. The iPhone mini is $699. The key features of this guy are significant, and they go from, the screen all the way through a bunch of different stuff. So you've got this new design, nice and squared off like iPhones used to be. And this is a look that I appreciate, for one. And it is really a breath of fresh air. It's refreshing to have this size, this form factor. It's easy to hold. Not that the old iPhones weren't easy to hold, but they were. I never liked the rounded design and always wanted to have this back. Was glad when the SE #1 came out because that gave us that back. But since the iPhone 6, we've only had rounded iPhones, and I just never thought it was that compelling a design. So I'm glad we're back to this. Other key features, you've got improved cameras, but as you may already know, the iPhone 12 and 11 and that kind of thing, they don't get all the camera goodness of the Pro models. We have a wide-angle lens and an ultra-wide lens, and no LiDAR, no telephoto lens like the Pro models have. I got the Pro model right here, and as you can see, 3 cameras plus that little black dot below the third camera is a LiDAR sensor. We'll talk about LiDAR more when we review that. But the cameras are improved. There's an OLED screen on this guy this year, and that's been one of the big knocks on the iPhone 11, the iPhone XR, is that instead of an OLED screen like the higher-priced iPhones, they had LCD screens that were of a considerably lower resolution, and people didn't like that. I never had a problem with the screen myself. I thought that they looked great. OLED, in some ways, is really fantastic, and you tell the difference, but I think a lot of people have been sold and, sort of just have marketing in their brains about these kind of things, because the LCD was fine. But this year, nothing to complain about because we have OLED in the iPhone 12 and the iPhone 12 mini. We also have 5G enabled in these phones, and 5G hasn't really been much of a thing for the majority of people in the United States and most of North America because it just hasn't matured. It hasn't really moved forward. It's in some very select urban locations, etc., etc. But there are two kinds of 5G. There's the millimeter wave 5G, which is the one that has like the super duper speeds. And then there's the sub-6 5G, which is a little bit better than 4G. Apple had 5G I don't know how many times I said 5G in the presentation that announced these phones, and then Verizon came out and they said 5G a bunch. And lo and behold, to my surprise, when I got home with this phone, and this Pro phone as well, and I booted them up, there was 5G. So it's not the millimeter wave, it's the sub-6, but still, 5G where I never thought I would have it. I live in the middle of not the middle of nowhere. I live in a college town in Iowa, and so we didn't have 5G, and I didn't expect it anytime soon, but there it is. Apple also came up with a new way to charge these phones, which they call Magsafe. This is the Magsafe puck. On the other side, it is rubbery, sticks to the back of the phone, just like this. Bonk. The nice thing about Magsafe is you can use it while, you're in landscape mode. You can use it while you're in portrait mode. It doesn't stick out of the bottom of the phone, which I've always found to make it difficult to hold a phone to use when you're trying to also charge it. It takes away the inconvenience of wireless charging in the sense that you don't have to put the phone down on a thing and wait for it to charge up. So Magsafe is cool. However, if you want to use Magsafe, does it come in a box? No. You have to buy it separately. The Magsafe puck costs $40. And here's something that's not a pro about the iPhone this year. Apple decided to take away the regular charging brick and also the headphones so that they could make a smaller box. Smaller box. Look how thin that box is. And I think really ultimately they're getting ready to take away the charging port altogether and go with Magsafe as the way to charge the phones. Will it happen next year? Will it happen the year after? I don't know, but it's going to happen soon. And Magsafe is a good technology. I am impressed with Magsafe, but there's not really a reason for it to exist yet. It's cool, but if you want to do it, you got to spend $40 plus $20 on a USB-C charger, because if you didn't buy the Pro models last year, you don't have a USB-C charging brick if you're an Apple-only person. So Magsafe is cool, but it is problematic. Speaking of problematic, let's move on to some cons. And there aren't a lot other than the camera that I mentioned and, the lack of the charger and that kind of thing. This is a very solid phone for $800. Apple makes really solid phones no matter what price range they're in. They're always really solid. I mean, you can disagree with me for whatever reason you want, but Apple has never released a dud in all the time that they've been making iPhones. Well, the iPhone 6 Plus, that might have been a dud. And then they had the touch disease thing. They've released phones with issues, but never have they been like phone breaking, can't use it issues. They're always solid. They last for a long time. And so you can't complain there. But I am not a fan of the colors that they had this year. I like this blue. And then they have also a red, which is more of a tomato soup red than red. And it's supposed to be product red. I like the deep red, the candy apple red of what is usually considered product red. But it's not as red this year. They have black, which looks really sexy, and white, which, the white is nice and clean, and I had a white iPhone 11, no problems there whatsoever. The batteries in these phones were made smaller this year, just by a little bit. Last year, Apple made huge strides in their battery life. Finally, the smaller phones became all-day phones, which they weren't always. Now, the iPhone mini is a smaller phone, and I don't know what the battery life is going to be like on that, but for this phone, the battery life has been fine. The standby time on an iPhone is always great, so even if you don't pick it up for 2 days, it then is still, this was at 78% when I picked it up today, and I hadn't charged it in several days. I've been using a different phone for the time being, but here's the problem. The overall big problem about the iPhone 12, especially versus the iPhone 12 Pro. In years past, there were some concessions that we've already discussed that you made when talking about getting the 11 or the 10R versus the Pro models. The 11 was $699 last year, whereas the Pro model started at $1,000. So you had a $300 gap. This starts at $799, and the base storage at $799 is 64 gigabytes. 64 gigabytes is almost not... 64 gigabytes is not very much storage in 2020. The Pro model starts at $1,000 with 128 gigabytes. So if you want to get 128 gigabytes and have plenty of storage and not have to worry about it, then you need to get the next step up, which I think is another $50. So then you're $150 away. There's just so little space between the iPhone 12 and the iPhone 12 Pro that it's really difficult to say that this is enough of a value to go with this over the Pro model. So in a weird way, the iPhone 12 and the iPhone 12 Pro, they're the same size, they have the same body style, they have different colors, but at the end of the day, they're basically the same phone. The iPhone 12 Pro has an extra camera lens. It has the LiDAR scanner. It comes with 128 gigabytes. The screen gets just a little bit brighter, which is probably not that big a deal, whereas the 12 is a totally serviceable phone. But here's my recommendation. Here are my thoughts about buying the 12 over the 12 Pro. If you are thinking about buying the 12, really the only reason that you should think about buying the 12 is if you like the colors better. There's no real compelling reason to buy this. The savings that you get by buying the 12 is not really enough to say that it's worth it over the 12 Pro. The 12 Pro has enough features over and above the 12 that it's really hard to argue spending the extra $150 or so to get the more storage, the more cameras, the more brighter screen, and several other things that are different. So I think that the majority of people are going to buy the iPhone 12. But I think also that that is not necessarily what people need to do. You could go the extra money, get the iPhone 12 Pro, and not miss out on anything. And honestly, if you're putting this thing on a payment plan or whatever, I mean, the differences between the money are not significant enough to say, oh, this is so much better a value than the 12 Pro. So it's a weird year for iPhones because the 12 is a good phone, but why buy it? Most people will, but I just don't think it's as worth it this year as it has been in years past. The iPhone 11 was bigger than the iPhone 11 Pro. Now they're both the same size. Anyway, if you want to get a 6.1-inch iPhone this year, I recommend getting the iPhone 12 Pro just because it has a little bit more for a little bit more money. And this, while it's a very good phone, there's just not as much of a compelling reason to pick it up instead of the Pro. Anyway, let me know what you think about that. Tell me down in the comments, would you go for the 12 or the 12 Pro? I mean, maybe you like the colors of the 12 better. I get it. There are some factors that are going to push one person or the other, one way or the other. Let me know what you think down in the comments. We'll have a boisterous discussion. Once again, thanks so much for being here. If this was your first time, please consider subscribing and hanging out with us, being a part of the Painfully Honest Tech Wizard Squad. And if you've been here before, thank you so much for coming back. If you've been here before and you're not subscribed, then, let's bring that 30% number up, right? So, once again, my name's Jason, sometimes known as the JTL. This is Painfully Honest Tech. Tech, so honest it hurts. Until the next time, I'm out.